All right, that'll do it. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Megan Stewart. I'm the Client Director at Vantage Performance and I'll be your moderator today. Today we're presenting Are You Ready for the New Normal? Hosted by Kevin Higgins, who's from Vantage Performance, who you'll see on video there. And with our guest Nigel, who's the founder and CEO of Red Digital. And he'll obviously be talking through all things digital. So a little housekeeping before we get started. We'll have 30 minutes of content today, followed by up to 15 minutes of question time. You can ask questions during the presentation. If you do have a question, you'll see that there's a question and answer module at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if you can please ask your questions via there. We'll try to answer them live as we can, and if we can't, then we'll answer them during question time at the end. All right, so without further ado, I'll hand over to Kevin Higgins. So he's the Executive Director of Queensland at Vantage Performance, and he'll be your host today.
Thanks, Megan, and welcome to the Vantage Resilience series, where we discuss strategies on making businesses stronger and more resilient. Well, are you ready for the new normal? One of the pillars for resilient business is a strong focus on business intelligence. And while COVID presents a major catalyst for change, it re-emphasizes the need to have a strong digital framework for your business. So today we'll be joined by Nigel Heyn, from founder and CEO of Red Digital. He's a passionate business entrepreneur with an instinct and curiosity for technology. He's successfully built several companies, all underpinned by the desire to leverage technology smarts in order to influence business models and realize owners' dreams. So Nigel thrives on learning what best practices exist in order to provide digital excellence for his client successes. Well, welcome, Nigel.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Appreciate it.
It's all right, and we're going to actually start off with a poll just to get things going. The question which will come up is, do you have a digital strategy? I'll give you kind of 10 seconds to answer that. It's a yes, no, or what is a digital strategy? And that'll just give us a bit of a feel for who's out there and what attention's been made towards digital strategy. So I'll leave it up to you, Megan, to moderate the results of that.
Yeah, so we've just got 70% of the votes in so far, so we might give it 5 or 10 seconds more and then we'll close it off.
Sure.
Great, all right, we'll end it there. So I'll just share those results to everybody's screen now. And as you can see, 44% of you have a digital strategy, 22 don't, and 33% is what is a digital strategy. So I'll leave that to you guys to discuss.
Yeah, well, I guess that's a good probably segue onto the first question, Nigel, and what does a digital strategy entail?
Yeah, great question, Kevin. So thank you very much. And look, it's interesting, those numbers probably resonate with sort of what we're seeing in the market. You know, I've been in this game for 26 years, hence the grey hair, but look, a lot of organisations don't have a digital strategy, or their digital strategy is quite weak. Where we see it is that, you know, everyone's got a business plan, a business strategy, they've got their vision, whether that's documented or not. You know, the analogy I use is, you know, you think when you build a house, you go and see your architect, you actually want to design something beautiful, but, you know, you've got to think about all of the services that go into making it functional, you know, like the sewerage, like the plumbing, like the electricity, like the air conditioning, right? So really that digital footprint and that digital strategy is, you know, how you actually bring together the people, the change management, the tools, and look, ultimately everything's underpinned by data. And I know we're going to talk about that today, but you know, the reason Amazon's the most successful business in the world is, you know, they're driven by data. And something that, you know, Jeff Bezos did very early on is he said that, you know, every department, if you need to ask another department for some data, build an API. And once you've got that open flow of data, you become very successful. Yeah. So look, a digital strategy really is a core element for a very successful business plan to be executed, and it is a differentiator. Without digital, you know, you're just another business like everyone else. And digital IP or intellectual property, building tools, building platforms, automation. If you do something once, or if you do something twice, you know, look to automate it. That's really where your digital, you know, strategy comes into play.
Yeah, right. Well, I know the medical profession, they use an MRI to scan, to look at organs and structure inside of your body, but you've developed an MRI for digital practices within a business. What is a digital MRI or what does a digital MRI on a business encompass?
Yeah, so I guess segueing from the previous question or comment really, Kevin, was because we found a lot of companies didn't, or organizations we spoke to, didn't really have that digital strategy. The MRI, if I talk about historically, look, 25 years ago, I started doing something that, I didn't really think of much, but I documented. I literally had a little notebook and was going around working with companies and, just asking them questions, what are you currently doing? Did lots of research to find out what is the best thing out there, and then, documented what we did to, what worked, what didn't work. And it effectively, this is our 26th year of doing this, we've successfully run our MRI methodology on 400 companies. And it's really helped organizations understand what they're doing today. So think of it as an audit. So the manager's really, the M is the manage, the R is the reimagine, and the I is the innovate. So, understand where you are today, map that against best practice, and then reimagine. If we were to, create the business to get, again, blue ocean strategy, unlimited budget, how we would do things differently. And then the I is that innovation plan. So, it's amazing. Like, even I didn't appreciate it when we went through this journey over the years, but, we've got the MRI now asking about 380 different points of an organization. So, you think about it, is your website Google friendly? Are your servers in the cloud? Are you optimizing? Basically there's so many touch points that digital, it touches literally everything in an organization. So our MRI is a process we take. It's 380 questions, and there's an audit effectively. But the real premise of all of this is to do two things. Every organization today has to optimize what they've got. We've got to find, we're not going to go back to the board and ask for more money. We've got to optimize what we've got and find savings to then reinvest into innovation. So if you do those two steps, you become a very successful organization. And that's what the MRI framework is all about, is helping you identify where you can be smarter by going through those 380 questions, and then putting together an innovation plan that really chunks everything down into 90-day sprints. So aligned to your 100-day sprints. And, I know we've worked on a few clients together, so it's been validated. I think one client in particular, we did our MRI and identified about $680,000 worth of annualized savings. And, to their credit, your client did a great job, Kevin, in that they found about $700,000 worth of savings. So, it does, if you follow the methodology, you do find budget, and then you can innovate and differentiate.
Yeah, and I guess to your point there, I mean, we always in Turnaround talk about one or two big changes in strategy. I guess there's probably only so many things a business can look at within a year. So if there's 2, 3, 4 significant changes, then that's probably what they should focus on, and break that up into kind of bite-sized chunks throughout the year. I presume that's your kind of strategy as well.
Yeah, look, definitely. I think, the struggle we find, Kev, is that, we're digital natives. We would like to do everything yesterday and very, very quickly, but the cadence on how fast an organization can change is really determined by them. And hence the reason the 90 days is, we feel that's a pretty good cadence for most organizations. Some, they've done one major digital initiative, one major digital change per annum. Some have done 2, but usually when you're chunking it down, even if you come up with, say, a 5-year plan, you can really only do that, maximum, I feel, 4, because there's so much change management involved. Turning the analog creatures into digital natives is not the easiest job.
Yep. Okay. I guess I'd be curious to understand, how do you actually optimize your digital footprint in your business? So what are those pillars, I guess, and what should people be looking for?
Yeah, really good question, actually. And, right now with what we've been through with the COVID-19 scenario, it's really highlighted the fact that, you've really got to optimize. And, there's probably 4 significant pillars that, organizations really need to look into. And I'll start with infrastructure, because that's where we see the biggest, I don't like to use the word wastage, but the biggest room to be sharper, really, right? So examples are, once you're in the cloud, people spin up servers, or there's data that's not in the most appropriate storage vault or storage cost center. So a good example is we had a client that had lots and lots of historical data. They were mandated to keep data for the life of the asset and then the construction game. So it's all about, like, how do we keep that in a very, very cost-effective manner, right? So, through the MRI, we identified that there was about $16,000 a month worth of savings from an infrastructure point of view. So, again, infrastructure is a really big point of view from, the servers, the storage, whether you're on-prem, whether you're in the cloud. The second thing too is communication. So, from a cost point of view, your internet links, your data SIMs, renegotiating, making sure that you don't sign long-term contracts because, every year things get faster and every year things, get cheaper. Licensing too, most people are using it in Australia anyway, Office 365, and some of those licenses, you literally have the ability to drive a Ferrari, but you're only going to the shops and back, right? So, changing that license to the right license type, identifying the use, most of these things have the fluid nature of changing on a monthly basis. So just aligning the right usage to the right need, and look, again, services. I think probably the other part we see as well is people are paying for reactive services, and by doing things smarter and being a bit more proactive, we've seen a change in that. But yeah, look, the biggest chunk we see is infrastructure. Just look at infrastructure, look at your communications, look at where your data's been stored. And as I alluded to before, talking about that MRI, that client in particular, the 700K's worth of savings was literally those three elements. It was infrastructure, communications, and services.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, we might actually move on to another poll question, and this time would like to ask: do you have a leader responsible for digital strategy in your organization? So it's someone that's actually bringing this all together and actually reporting on it and coming up with that strategy. And I think, as I mentioned before, Nigel, the digital strategy is really a subset of your overarching kind of one-page strategic plan. So that element of digital strategy, do you have someone responsible for that? So I've actually got an option to vote for that too, so I might actually vote. But we'll let that finish. Megan, probably another few more seconds.
Yeah, we've got 76% of you have now responded, so I think we can close that off, and it's quite a pleasing result. 62% of you have said that you do have a leader responsible for digital strategy, and 38% have said no. So,
yep. Just before I go on to another question, Nigel, just curious as to that. What's the title of that leader, and what's generally their role and responsibility? It's like a chief information officer or chief officer responsible for that digital strategy. But what's their typical scope and role in a business?
Yeah, really good question, Kevin. And I guess it depends on the size of the organization too, right? So, the larger end of town do have dedicated resources, whether it's a chief digital officer, chief information officer, chief technology officer. They're usually empowered with the right, P&L and budgets and, governance and control. But, what we really see where the small to medium enterprise, which makes up the bulk of, organisations in Australia and in particular, Southeast Queensland where we live, I think what we find there is a lack of, I wouldn't say a leader. There's usually the owner or the business owner, the CFO. Someone's got the responsibility of making digital relevant for the organisation, but digital is a completely different language. If I start talking about IoT and Python scripting and cloud servers and Azure and AWS and GPU, all of these things, it really requires someone that has that independence, that really has that level of ability to bridge the gap between a business desire and a technical execution. So I think, for organizations that have a leader, it's great that they've got a leader, and especially this poll, validates that people are taking digital a lot more seriously. And I think, the COVID scenario has been fantastic. It's it's been positive from a digital point of view, obviously negative for many other realms, but the digital, it's forced people to actually do things what we're doing today, right? You know, don't get on a plane and, you know, we've had one client that's gone from spending $1.4 million worth of travel budget to, you know, basically saying, well, look, you know, we can do most of our things on technology, right? So I think, you know, to answer your question, it's really finding someone that does have that independence to bridge the gap, understand and hold people to account, you know, run tenders. Don't you know, assume that the partners you've got are providing you the right thing, because, you know, technology moves so fast. You know, industry best practice is really hard to stay up to date with from a technology point of view. You know, we've got lots and lots of people here, and even for us, you know, the education, the innovation, that training, and just experimentation. You know, it's really hard. So I think, you know, having a leader is great, but having a leader that actually has the right resources, the tools, understands that technical language and can bridge the gap between a business requirement and a technical execution. That's really the hardest part to actually, you know, try and fill.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I remember a discussion we had a couple of years ago. You were saying in the next kind of 5 years, if companies don't embrace digital now, or those who are going to embrace digital now, they're going to be, you know, at the forefront in 5 years' time, because it's just going to be the norm. So those who aren't embracing it and having some kind of strategy around that are going to be kind of left behind in about 5 years' time. Well, I guess that's probably another 3 years' time. So, it's just another question. Do you see a lot of people kind of uptaking that digital thinking and putting some strategies around that, or do you think there's still a bit of education involved and probably a bit of ironing out of different platforms and, you know, various business intelligence tools for people to kind of get their head around? Is that something people are embracing right now?
Yeah, look, I think people are seeing the value of it. People have, you know, admittedly been burnt as well. You know, part of the reason we have been really building our MRI, we've built it now into a platform that, you know, people can just jump online, do it all self-service, right? Is that, I guess, you know, being a digital native and being in industry, I get quite upset when I hear stories about an organisation that's gone and signed, you know, $1 million for an ERP, you know, 3 years later, and, you know, burnt $5 million. They're, you know, quite upset and realise that, you know, tech isn't all it's cracked up to be, right? So, you know, for us, it was really, you know, making sure that people are making the right decisions, not acting, you know, for the sake of acting, but actually to do it in a systematic way. And yeah, look, we are seeing people doing it better. I guess we would like to see more, but the flip side of it is, you know me, I like buying businesses that are good businesses that don't have digital in them, and then we put digital in them, and then we can, you know, sell them at a much higher, you know, rate, right? So, look, there's opportunities everywhere. Digital is a differentiator. And it, you know, a lot of, I've noticed, especially in Southeast Queensland, like we've really started to stand up and take notice, and, you know, connectivity, cloud, you know, SaaS software, a lot of the industry has driven that change, and yeah, it's been very, very positive, and it's just going to continue and get bigger and bigger. So I expect my 380 questions to balloon to 1,000 questions in the next 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's probably a good segue to the next question, because most people actually see investing in digital as a cost. But what is the cost actually of not investing in it now?
Yeah, so look, you know, very good question, because what I just said, it's the, you know, if you put yourself in an acquirer's shoes, right? So you're looking at an organisation that is a great company but doesn't have anything digital. That's a huge opportunity, but you're not going to be paying a premium for it, right? Whereas if you've got a very solid digital business that's, or digitally empowered business, I should say, that's data driven, you know, every decision is being made with really good data. Everything that you do is automated, you know, and look, not to the level of perfection, but you've built intellectual property, you've got systems, you've got your own platform. You know, a traditional business might sell for 3 times profit. You know, we've seen digital businesses go for, you know, 5 to 6 times profit, right? So, you know, when you do the maths, that enterprise value is critical in the long run, because you always want to build something different. And, you know, it's like going into the supermarket. If you're going to buy, you know, one business and you've got an option for another one that's a lot better, a lot simpler, that can scale, because digital can scale. You know, robots and the, you know, technology is scalable, humans aren't. That's really where you can get that multiplier effect. So yes, I think, you know, there's more. And look, you know, I'm a digital native. We do this for a living and we make money out of it. But the reality is, if you're not doing it, you're just going to fall behind, and, you know, someone will crush you or someone will buy you and, you know, turn you around.
Yep. Yeah. And I guess when you look at the data in a business, it can be a lot, you know, very overwhelming, and probably a lot of business leaders will just make a lot of those kind of critical decisions, maybe based on gut or what worked last time. But what kind of decisions can be enhanced through the use of data?
Yeah, so look at another great question, Kevin. Just thinking through our experience, data is really the differentiator. It's the ability for you to take the emotion out of a decision as a business leader. And it is a differentiator in how you're going to actually get to that next level, because people ask me, what's the difference between data analytics, data science, all of this? And the best analogy or best example I can give people is that if you think about it, farming, right? So you've got a certain area of land, you're going to sow your seeds, grow the crops, and then you're going to harvest them, and then you're going to sell them. And it's a fairly linear process. But when you start bringing data into that equation, what do my buyers want? What time of the year they want? What's the weather? What's my soil conditions? Have I got sensors in the ground? Like, the more data you bring into the equation, that the left-hand corner of the paddock is terrible because it doesn't, the water washes away. Coles is not going to buy all my crops next year because I've got too much competition. So I guess the analogy is, the more data you bring into the mix, the smarter you can make a decision, the less waste you're going to have. And it doesn't have to be rocket science, right? Most organizations have a lot of data that they're not leveraging, right? So, the process of getting the data together, you got to capture it. Then you've got to cleanse it, like putting it through the sieve, putting it through the filter. You've got to warehouse it and get it controlled. And then analytics is always retrospective. Data analytics is looking backwards. Data science is predictive, looking out to the future. So, we're seeing a lot of organizations, they've collected a lot of data. They've tried to do a bit of cleansing, and probably in not the greatest possible way. Some have dabbled with data warehousing and business intelligence and all of that, but it tends to be very retrospective. And really the big opportunity is that data science piece about, being predicting, bringing many data sets together, connecting, external, feeds as well, and being able to predict ahead of the competition that's still stuck on data analytics.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I know from a turnaround perspective, when we go into kind of analyze the root cause and come up with initiatives, using various tools like Power BI and some of those analytic tools, they create more questions to be answered. That gives you some trends and analysis, and helps, as you say, take the emotion out of some of the decisions and say, well, here's what the data is telling us. Okay, well that's great. I think we've probably got some really good insights from you there, Nigel. We may have some questions that may have come during the last 20 minutes or half an hour. I might just hand over to Megan, who's moderating, to see if there's anything there that people would like answered.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kevin. And thank you, Nigel. So I've got a question actually to kick things off. What size of business do you think needs a dedicated digital resource? Like, often smaller businesses, I guess, outsource to people like yourselves, or outsource sort of service IT provider. But at what point do you think things should be brought in-house, if ever?
Yeah, good question, Megan. And I guess, look, it does really depend on the industry, the organisation, whether you are significantly dependent on everything digital. But look, in 26 years, I can say I'm touching just over 400 organisations in that time, in various capacities. Some we've ended up acquiring, some we've been on boards of, some are still clients. Only yesterday talking to a client that we started putting in infrastructure 26 years ago, and we're still looking after them. But the turning point we find, crossing the chasm for us is really, we see probably about 150, a staff size of around about 150 seats. That's when we find that, there's so many departments, so many areas, the level of infrastructure that's required to support that, the level of spend, you do need to have someone. It's not an outsourced role, that it needs a leader internally, and that leader internally then needs to actually, have a really competent pool of resources they can call upon as and when they need it. Yeah. So to answer your question, I'd say 150 in my experience is usually that changing point from, we can manage everything with a a pseudo leader and a competent external partner, and then that's when we start, building internal capability while still leveraging the best of the industry, partners as and when required.
Great, thanks for that. So just a reminder to everybody, I encourage you to ask some questions through the Q&A panel at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So we've got an anonymous question that's come in here. They've asked whether your questionnaire helps them understand their whole business process, and if not, can you do that? So I assume there by questionnaire it's referring to the digital MRI?
Yeah, so really the MRI is designed to cover the entire business from start to finish. So it covers 11 different areas of the business. So the leadership, the finance systems, the marketing systems, sales systems, communication, collaboration, teaming. It really is it touches, because digital does touch every aspect of the organization. Through that process, it will identify whether you've got weaknesses in your systems and workflows. It doesn't actually tell you how to fix those, but it will actually, identify to say, look, these things need to be done. This is a framework you can look at doing it. And really what it is, it's basically aligning what you've got today against what is industry best practice. And it does change. We update this every month, our MRI platform, and then because technology changes every month, and then it will give you an output. So yeah, look, I guess the mixed answer there may not answer that question entirely, but it will identify weaknesses in your systems and give you a guide as to how to fix it. It won't necessarily tell you, you've got to automate this flow to connect to this flow, but it really will give you the ability to go and engage a consultant, probably a business analyst, and ironically we do have business analysts on staff because we do identify this, and clients go, well, look, it's all well and good, you telling us we've got a problem, can you help us, right? So that's where we start getting down and dirty, and that's a reality of where our business starts making our money from a consulting point of view.
Great. So we've got one more question. It's rather broad, but the question is, with so many different apps in the marketplace, how do we know which is the right one for us? So what's the correct process to research and assess different products before committing to an app or a certain subscription?
Yeah, this is a great question, Megan. I'm glad whoever answered that, well done, because part of the MRI process is that what we've found with a lot of companies is they don't have a structure or they don't have a digital governance about, these are the principles that have to adhere to with every decision we make on digital. So, part of our engagement with every client of ours is we basically establish upfront, what are your digital principles? It has to be in the cloud, no long-term contracts, fully hosted, fully managed, data API, so we can suck data in and out. So, once you've got your framework established, or those digital principles, as I alluded to, and look, most of them that we create for clients, they're probably about 20 items, right? But it really takes again the emotion out of the decision. So if you don't know what app, you basically do that gap analysis and basically say, look, this is the app we're looking at. Does it tick all the boxes? No, move on to the next one. But it was really how we create that framework is we've distilled what is best practice, what are the common threads and themes, and that's what identifies your digital principles. So I think, look, part of, for every organization, and definitely not a sales pitch, whether it's us or anyone else, you should really start looking at, creating some sort of digital principles about, these are the non-negotiables. It's just like your business values, these are the values, these are the, the guidelines that we operate as a business. You need to have the same thing from a digital point of view. We only do things that are in the cloud. We only do things that data's housed in Australia. We only, choose software that has an API to push and pull data. That's high level framework that you should be looking for. Great.
We've got one more question coming through in the question and answer box at the moment, but just while that's coming through, in relation to turnaround, because that's obviously what we specialise in, turnaround and performance improvement. In the turnaround, how important do you think a digital strategy is for a heavily distressed business? Is there a time and place for that to be done at the front end of a turnaround? Or are there generally, I guess, higher priority items that need to take place before a digital strategy is adopted?
Yeah, so look, Megan, I think, you're asking a digital native, how important digital is, and I think it's very, very important. But in the whole scheme of things, look, there's really the four points of every organization, right? You got to set a strategy, you got to fund it, so you get your cash aligned, get the right resources being your people, and then be able to execute, right? So I think, look, digital really has the ability to help drive a strategy. Digital has the ability to find funding, so you can optimize your spend, as I alluded to before. Get your communications, get your infrastructure, get your data, get your services, really squeeze that lemon so that you are getting the best, and make sure that it's agile and nimble, that you can chop and change, as the market, moves as well. And look, if you do digital really, really well, it is a differentiator. A good example, another client of ours recently, they were spending $2 million on Google AdWords, but the marketing agency that was working with them wasn't actually monitoring the bounce rates, the fall offs from, the landing pages on the mobile screen versus the desktop screen. So, just by using science, just by using data, just by using Google's tools, we were able to quickly go, well, hang on a sec, there's a lot of money being wasted here. Let's quickly, turn off that tap. And we did. So, that client has gone from a $2 million Google AdWords spend down to a 1.4. And now, she's got $600,000 that she can reinvest into, more innovation, more smarter. So from a turnaround point of view, I think digital has the ability to really make a difference. Purely because it's involved in everything, from your HR systems to your finance systems to, the way we interact, the way we communicate. And if you're really smart about all 380 elements, it will not only give you a really good share of wallet to optimize, it will also give you the ability to innovate and differentiate.
Great. Well, that pretty much answers the next question that comes through. So I'll just note that to the person who asked that question. So we've got another one just in relation to COVID. So it's just asking yourself, Nigel, what your recent observations are in terms of how prepared Australian businesses have been and how they reacted to COVID in a digital sense.
Yeah, look, as I was smiling when I said that, is that I think we've seen that people that we've been talking to for many years, one in particular comes front to mind. I've been telling this particular organisation with about 90 staff, and I'm good friends with the partners, that they needed to embrace cloud, and they needed to be on Microsoft Teams. They needed to be, they've moved to Office 365, but the need to work remotely has forced them to change. So look, I think, those companies or those organizations that have been sitting on the fence and realizing, look, how do we actually change our humans to work in a digital environment? The positive out of a negative, and life is all about, positives out of negatives. You've got to, take what you're given and you turn it into, keep churning the milk and turn it into some great butter, right? So, for our point of view, we see that, organizations really have had to, stand up, take digital more seriously, and they have, because they've either had to fall behind and not have that fear. Once you're in the cloud, once you don't see and hug and touch your servers anymore, once you've got new software, it's still business as usual, and you can do things faster, you can do things better, you can save costs, you're not tied to any old infrastructure, and you become a nimble and agile organization. So yeah, look, it's been a great improvement. It's certainly not perfect. I don't think it ever will be, but it's highlighted the fact that digital is a differentiator to get that one step ahead.
Great. So we've just got one more question in the bank. It's asking from your experience, it sort of ties into the question in relation to turnaround and different business priorities and convincing people that digital is a cost-saving exercise in itself. But from your experience, what is the best way to motivate a client that doesn't understand the need for a digital upgrade?
Look, the best thing we've done, Megan, is we've taken clients into other organisations that we've literally done a digital transformation from start to finish. Literally things like walking into the office and, there's a $300 HD camera that identifies whether the person is happy or sad when they enter, and then when they're happy or sad when they leave. So, that way of doing a sort of a net promoter score to, having, flexible workstations, no infrastructure, the ability to work home. We do see, every week I'm talking to someone that someone's referred us to go and try and help from a digital point of view. And, a lot of it is, humans are tangible creatures, right? So, right now we, up until recently, have been able to go out and do anything. It's been quite frustrating. And until you actually walk someone through a similar organisation that has actually made the change, it's then, oh, wow, look, the light bulb comes on. I go, maybe, we should be looking at this a bit more seriously. And look, to be an employer of choice in today's day and age, there's people that are coming, through uni and school and all of that. Like my daughter, she's 6 years old and she's been living on Microsoft Teams. I reckon she knows more about Microsoft Teams than most people. So I've told her, she'll come and join the red team when she finishes. But yeah, so look, I think, it is really, really, important.
Great. All right. Well, that's all the questions we have today by the looks of it. So I'll just hand back over to Kevin and he'll talk through what we've got coming up and close out the webinar.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Megan, and thanks, Nigel. That was great. I think we covered quite a bit of content there on the time available. So really appreciate that. And thank you, everyone. We appreciate everyone kind of logging in and being here during your lunch hour, hopefully having a sandwich while you're listening. In the coming weeks, we're going to be discussing supply chain, so reducing costs through better procurement, some sales effectiveness, how and why, looking at some mental health coping strategies during COVID, and onshoring, which is very topical at the moment. How do we do it and why? So if you've got any further questions, feel free to contact us directly at Vantage Performance. We'll send out an email tomorrow just with the webinar. But thanks again for joining us today, and we shall see you next time. Goodbye.